All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining another Quick Bite webinar. This month, we're actually taking a look at what's new in the latest release of GP, which just came out. This is the 18.6 release, otherwise known as October 2023. Okay, just a little bit about ICS. I'm sure most of you are aware, but we were established in 1996. We have offices in Buffalo, Richmond, and Orlando. We're your solutions-oriented partner. We have a long-term relationship with a lot of our customers. Um, we're supporting over 300 clients within the Dynamics community for over 30 years. Just a little bit about our solutions. A lot of you hopped on here to learn about what's new in GP, and that's great. We also support two different cloud solutions, another Microsoft product called Dynamics Business Central, and we also sell and support Acumatica ERP as another alternative. And then for those that who don't know me, my name is Adam Martin. I've been a consultant here at ICS, formerly SSG, for over 10 years now. I consult in all three of our products, GP, Business Central, and Acumatica. I'm our practice manager for Microsoft ERP, certified in Business Central, and happy to walk you all through the exciting new features in GP today. Okay, so to start off, I want to talk about the modern life cycle in Dynamics GP. And this is, if you were to Google or go on to Microsoft's website, you would see that this is the timeline for GP right now. And you can see that GP and the 18.6 release would be in this modern life cycle, that last bar at the bottom of this particular chart. And so in October of 2019 is when Microsoft introduced the modern lifecycle policy. Before this date is where you were governed by the fixed lifecycle policy. The modern lifecycle policy is great. It offers support and servicing, including bug fixes and latest tax updates. Under this policy, our customers are staying current by taking at least one of the three GP updates per year. Those are typically released in June, October, and December. So October is the big release. Typically, December is your year-end release. And again, these updates are going to consist of hot fixes, tax updates, and any relevant regulatory updates. These updates, and you're going to see today, can include changes in usability or reliability to address top customer issues and other areas that are critical and making sure that businesses run successful on Dynamics GP. Okay, so we're going to get right into our new features of GP 18.6. Before I do that, I want to mention here about how a lot of these features that I'm showing you today were ones that Microsoft listened to our customers and took their suggestions and actually made them into this latest release. Almost all of them have come from suggestions that were voted on in the community. This is the link here to the Dynamics GP experience website where you can go in, make suggestions, or vote on other people's existing suggestions. But just a great thing to point out is that, yeah, Microsoft is listening to us and our community and adding those features into our release, which, again, excited to show you today. Okay, so we're going to go through each of these features and things that have been added to this latest release of GP. The first one I want to point out is something that is pretty cool. This is the financial summary inquiry redisplay feature. So I'm sure you're all familiar, especially those in finance, are familiar with our summary inquiry window, and that if you were making a journal entry to an account, that this summary window never had a redisplay on it. You'd have to even go as far as closing the window and opening it back up to see the balances change on this window. So what they've done is, and as you can see on this screenshot here, is added a redisplay button at the top of the window where you can just simply click that redisplay instead of having to close the summary inquiry. So real simple change, but happy to see that that was included. Okay, the next feature is one that hopefully maybe you haven't had to experience, but for those that do have experienced it before, might have understood um, this feature and why it was put in. So the reverse fiscal year end close by company. So this feature was added in so that you can reverse a fiscal year end close. Prior to the 18.6 release, it would require that all users be logged out of all the Dynamics GP companies, not just the one that you were wanting to reverse the fiscal year end close in. This year, they added the feature so that you don't have to be out of the other companies. So users can continue to work or be logged in and processing transactions in other companies, but just the company that you want to reverse the historical year end in is the company that you just need to make sure users are out of. So what a time saver, and allows your users to keep processing in other companies. Okay, the next one is customer statements displaying open items. So this is one that we've actually in the past helped a lot of our customers with by modifying these customer statements so that it did behave the way now that the new feature is allowing it to. And that is by removing truly paid documents from your customer statements. And so with this latest release, this was something that was obviously voted on, but that customers wanted to be able to really exclude fully paid documents. And so this is when you're printing your statements, and if you're choosing the exclude fully applied payment option on your statement window and running the statement, is when it's going to be excluding those fully applied documents. And you can see some screenshots that I'm sharing here of the prior 18.6 release up at the top, and now in this 18.6 release at the bottom, how these things would typically show. So at the top, you would typically have to run paid transaction removal to get those to disappear off of your customer statements. Now, with that setting on the statement routine, it should pull those off altogether. So this was one of the most common requests from customers regarding statements, was to only show the truly open items. And prior to 18.6, the only solution again was to run the paid transaction removal. So again, excited to see that feature added to this release. Okay, the next one is for those that are emailing or needing to reprint our vendor remittances. They've added an ability now to obviously customize our messages, and that's been there in the past. So many people have taken advantage of the message setups in GP and modified those messages to tailor them to how you want to relay this information to a particular vendor in this case. But the thing was that when you were emailing or reprinting the vendor remittance, the customized field messages that were added to the email message setup weren't included. So now in 18.6, if you were to add any of those custom fields onto the email message body, we will now see those when you go to email or reprint the remittance from the inquiry windows. Okay, this is a big one, especially getting towards year end, and this is our all payables 1099 form, or I should say, all of our payables 1099 forms will print with lines, and so no longer do we need the printed forms from Staples or Office Max, wherever you're getting those three-part forms, to have to load into your printer. GP will now print all the 1099s on blank paper. So if you're familiar with the 18.5 release, they did add that feature to be able to print the 1099 NEC with the boxes and lines on blank paper. But now, with all that positive feedback, they took that and now have added that into 18.6 with all the remaining payables 1099 forms. So that's going to be your miscellaneous dividend and interest. All those 1099 forms will be able to be printed on blank paper. So this new report writer form will print on an 8.5 by 11, print one 1099 per page, and a nice feature to print your forms to screen, verify your 1099 information. But it could also be used as the form that you're going to deliver to your vendor. Now, there's a lot more 1099 changes this year, especially when it comes to e-file. E-file did not make it into this release of GP, but we do have workarounds available for those that need to e-file their 1099s with the IRS. So please pay attention to our newsletters. We have a blog article on the 1099s and how to get around the e-file requirements and all that stuff. So, and again, if you have more questions on that, you can reach out to support. But again, this release of GP, we're going to be able to print all the payables 1099 forms on blank paper, which is really nice. Okay, the next one is this drop-down list selection for your batch source on navigation lists. So this is again something added to 18.5 was the ability to, on your navigation list, add batch source and batch number, and ability to kind of filter your list based off of those two things. But what they found was that people that were using batch source, it was a free-form text field where you had to type in the batch source. And as you can see, this drop-down list, there's some pretty lengthy batch sources that there could be. And so what they did now was instead of having you free-form enter those in, you can now have a drop-down list so that you can select and see all the different batch sources and have that filtered exactly correct so that you don't have to be typing that in and remembering what to call it. Okay, the print and email cash receipts. So again, something that was added in 18.5 was the functionality to print out a copy of your customer's cash receipt or email a copy of the customer's payment with a new Word template. We saw a lot of positive feedback around this as well, and Microsoft included this new feature as adding on an ability now to set up a message type for cash receipts and then added that to your customer email settings. And so what you're seeing a screenshot here is of the customer email settings, the same place you go to set up what message ID you want to use on each of those document types. And you can see cash receipts have been added there at the bottom. So you will be able to set up those message IDs and be able to, when you email a cash receipt out, it can use that selected message ID. Print sales order processing blank picking ticket template. This is something that for those that are printing picking tickets out of GP onto Word template, one of the things you may or may not have known is that if you were to mark off the SOP blank picking ticket bin sequence, which is where it's maybe a little bit tough to see on the screenshot, but the top window there, I have it with an arrow and a checkbox on it, that it was not going to be printing the template version. And when that print separate picking ticket per site was checked, and instead sending directly to the printer, the report writer version. So now the system will print the template to the printer. It will print a template for each site and also a final document that includes all sites combined. For those of you that are using requisitions, this is a feature, the set unit of measure from the purchase order requisition to the purchase order. So there's a new setting that's been added to the requisition setup. You can see it circled here in the setup window where it's taking the U of M, whether that's from the requisition line items U of M or prior to this, it was taking it from the item. So in the 18.6 release, a setup option was added to this window for the user to choose the unit of measure. A similar feature is available when creating a purchase order from a sales order, but you cannot find a similar configuration when we were in the purchasing module. So in 18.6, when selected, we will use the U of M from the purchase requisition to create the line on the PO. And so this is obviously a helpful thing so that the proper U of M is being assigned as you're creating the PO from your requisitions. Okay, another simple kind of fix here is on our workflow emails with item decimals. So those of you that are using workflow in GP, you're probably familiar with the message bodies, and if you're including any sort of totals, that it was always extending out to the 5 decimals. What we're seeing now is that the document amount and subtotals are only going to be displaying the 2 decimals, and so you can see the exact notifications prior to 18.6 at the top on this screenshot, and at the bottom in the 18.6 version, what that looks like, displaying the nice 2 decimals, because obviously we don't have document amounts or subtotals that do go out to 5 decimals. So a nice simple fix makes it a lot cleaner and easier to read on our workflow email assignments. Okay, for project time and expense workflow, we have a My Expenses, My Team Expenses navigation list, and now ability to see the delegate list. So there's two new navigation lists for project time and expense, specific to expenses that are designed to help you filter down the clutter and focus on expenses that involve you and your team if you are a manager or set up as a delegate for others. These new lists are labeled as My Expenses and My Team Expenses. The My Expenses list is going to display your expenses, any expenses submitted by you on behalf of others, and any expenses that are pending your approval. And so what you see there is a column that's going to show you the workflow user that is assigned as the approver on that particular list. And then the My Team Expenses list is going to be displaying your expenses. Once again, expenses submitted by users that you are a delegate for, and any expenses that are pending your approval. So power users can also add the workflow user column to these navigation lists to make it easier for users to know whether they are pending approver or if the expense is pending somebody else's approval. And so what you see on the left-hand side here is how you customize the navigation list to add the workflow user as an available column on the navigation list. And on the right-hand side here, picture, we have the My Team Expenses actually showing you that column added to the navigation list. Okay, project time expense workflow in My timesheets list. So again, another added navigation list is for project time and expense specific to timesheets, and it's designed to help you filter down the clutter and focus on timesheets that involve you. This new list is labeled My Timesheets. And so on this particular list, it's displaying your timesheet, any timesheets submitted by you on behalf of others, and any timesheets that are pending your approval. Okay, for those that are using payroll, the year-end wage report formatting, something that surprisingly has been lived with without formatting for so long, but a very common report that payroll people use at the end of the year is this particular wage report. And on this report, by default, the commas were displaying in the header, but not in the body of the report. So kind of made it very difficult to read, and it would just make more sense if we had commas in those wages, taxes, and other fields that are at the bottom of the report. So in the 18.6 release, we are seeing the commas added to numbers and that display on the year-end wage report. And so this particular report is the one that's, for those that don't know, is the one that's printed under routines, and it's called the payroll year-end wage report. All right, the letter writing assistant is also been added to. So this letter writing assistant is particularly on expiring tests in human resources. So test tracking in human resources is something useful to customers for tracking a variety of test information. A nice way to notify the employee of maybe a test information is through a letter writing assistant. Typically, customers like to use this mail merge reporting option as a way to notify users of expiring tests and potential due dates. And so from your employee maintenance windows now, you can choose to write letters and prepare a new letter or modify an existing letter is what we're seeing here. Okay, we also have a letter writing assistant for final notice collection letters. And so these letter writing assistants have been around a while, and particularly the final collection notice has been around a while. But what hasn't been there is the ability to add in, like the other notices on the customer, the invoice detail information of what a customer is outstanding on. And so with the final collection letter now, the system will allow you to include the invoice details to the report and print that information for the customer. So whether you're printing the first, the second, or the final notice to your customers, you'll be able to include the invoice details into the body of those letters. Okay, for those that are using document attachment, as you know, as you attach documents in Dynamics GP, you're actually storing them right to the database. you've always had this option of whether or not you want to allow documents to be deleted or not. But what you may or may not know is that when you do delete them, they just go to another tab on the doc attach window. And so it keeps an audit or a history of even attachments that are there but have been deleted. So the problem with that is that as you delete documents, maybe you want them fully deleted. And so there was never a way to get them fully removed or out of the database. So with the 18.6 release, we now have the ability to completely remove the attachment. So it'll still remove itself to the deleted tab on the doc attach window that you're attaching from. But now you'll see that in this bottom right screenshot here, a delete button that's been added on the delete tab that's going to actually fully delete it. And so when you process that, you'll actually fully remove that from the database and from the record. Okay, the next one we have is the shared mailbox with multi-factor authentication. So one of the exciting new features that we have is another request that came directly from customer feedback, and that's the ability now to set up both the sales and purchasing series to use a shared mailbox for sending email. So with all the work that Microsoft has done around MFA and customers using it heavily, shared mailbox was something customers found they needed. And so the initial setup for this occurs in the email setup of both purchasing and sales. And in these windows, you will see a new checkbox, and it says, use share mailbox. And when you mark that and have replies sent to, that field will clear and change its name now to a shared mailbox. And that's what we're seeing on both of these sales email setup and purchasing email setup windows here on the screenshots. And so you can enter in the email address you want documents to be emailed from and to appear and to be emailed from in this particular window. There is some setups that are involved around this outside of GP as well, and what you need to do in Azure and app registration. So if this is something that you're interested in and feature and want more information, you can reach out to us after this webinar. Okay, and then the last feature we have is modern authentication and single tenant app registration. So again, another feature that allows us now to create an app registration in Azure that uses single tenant option in addition to the multi-tenant option that we had previously. So this one was added because there's more customers that are requiring the multi-tenant authentication option in Azure app registration. And prior to 18.6, if you had selected the single tenant option, you would have received an unknown error. So this is kind of a fix for that. And so what we're seeing here is an ability now to have both single and multi-tenant app registration available in Dynamics GP. Again, if this is something that you're interested more in, please reach out to us and we will be happy to guide you in the right direction in getting this set up correctly. Okay, that does it for all of the new features and that have been added to the 18.6 release. Be paying attention as you're going to receive an email, and along with that is going to be a recording of the webinar that you just attended. And you also have the option to customize your newsletter subscription options. So be sure to do that. And as always, you can please reach out to support with any questions and to start the conversation about an upgrade to the latest version of GP. And on that email as well, you'll be able to initiate any questions that you may have. Appreciate your time this afternoon and look forward to talking to you all soon.